You're listening to the Product Coalition podcast with Jay Stansell. This is where product mastery happens. This is where careers are made. Welcome to the Product Coalition podcast. Let's go.
Welcome, everyone. Today, we've got a guest who's been at the forefront of product management excellence and generative AI innovation, a true heavyweight in the space. Dr. Brian Glassman. Brian, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Jay. It's a pleasure to be on your show. And hello from kind of chilly New York City.
Awesome. Now, Brian is a patent inventor, a VP of product management, a seasoned leader with over 25 years of experience turning cutting-edge technology into market-ready products that generate billions in revenue. Brian's academic credentials are just as impressive. A PhD in product innovation from Purdue, a master's in engineering from Duke, and dual degrees in mechanical engineering. He's also a professor at New York University, blending academic rigor with real-world expertise. Now, Brian is also pioneering how generative AI is transforming product management workflows, advising companies on AI strategy, development, and the very important part of governance. As a founding editor of the International Journal of Innovation and Science, he's shaping the global conversation on innovation practices in the AI era. Now, if that wasn't enough, his upcoming book dives deep into the intersection of AI, product leadership, and engineering, making him one of the best people to guide us through this next wave of product innovation. Brian, so good to chat to you today. Thanks for making the time, and really excited to get into this conversation around generative AI and the impact on product managers. I touched a little bit around some of the moments throughout your career there on the introduction, Brian, but through your career so far, what are some peak enjoyable moments that you've had in the world of product management?
Thank you, Jay, for having me on again. Pleasure to be with you and to talk to your esteemed audience of product professionals. One of the things that I view very as a high level of satisfaction for my career is seeing my products actually go out into use, get into the customer hands, and seeing the delight with the customers. Whether it's a SaaS product, if it's an oil engineering product with the major oil companies, and seeing the executives light up that we could be making their oil field safer, or if it's something like an enterprise software, seeing the vast users across the enterprise be happy, that their experience and their work that they perform on a daily basis is, operating more easily.
Fantastic. I love the fact you've got such strong academic background, but the thing that's so important to you is the outcomes, putting products in the hands of customers, of users, and seeing the value it creates, and not just sticking in that theoretical world. Brian, let's get into today's show. It's all around generative AI. So my first question is going to be, what are you seeing, feeling, and hearing around ways generative AI is being used by product managers right now?
It's a very important question. And I really like to emphasize to the audience today that if you haven't got on a ChatGPT, if you haven't got on a Claude and played with it, spoke to it, chatted with it, really probed its level of knowledge and its level of intelligence, then you're doing yourself a dissatisfaction. So get out there and play with this stuff. So when it comes to product management, a lot of product managers will ease it into their company, either, through their CEO's authorization or kind of around their back, to structure emails, to structure communications, to work on presentations, debug and kind of find grammar errors in documents. This is the first line of use. And it's the best line of use, in my opinion, because you get to learn how to use the system. And I'm sure, Jay, you've interacted with it in that way, right?
100%. Funny enough, I'd say ChatGPT and Claude are the two go-to tools for me on a day-to-day. And I think I'd probably touch either one of them 20 to 30 times a day for various different tasks and needs.
No, excellent. Now, one thing I would like to highlight for the product managers who are looking, say, at custom research is you can load in big databases of, say, support tickets, for instance. You can load up 400 pages of a PDF of all the support tickets for your particular product into something like a Claude or a ChatGPT and ask it to give you a well-rounded analysis of all that input. That's a fairly easy thing to do. Put it in a PDF and load it in, and then tell it to do some, general high-level statistics and run through and give you some insights into that data. And to do that yourself would take you 400 pages of tickets, maybe 4 or 5 hours, and you're doing it here in 15 minutes. What do you think, Jay?
100% agree. And I think it's almost becoming so standard that I'm taking these types of approaches. I'm at the point where I'm actually forgetting really how many hours I've saved per week through applying this into my workflows. But the next point, Brian, for you then is the outputs. So you're talking there about various inputs into these systems, but then we've got the outputs, the insights. Could you talk to me about how you're applying quality control around what's being generated by AI so that you can decide whether you trust it with what you're getting out of it?
Sure. Let me stand back for a second and we'll talk about the generative AI because they're not all equal, right? So you noticed as time went on, the models kept getting bigger and the companies kept announcing their models, right? And I'm sure you've seen this, Jay, that, Google came out with a new Gemini, or ChatGPT launched 4.5. These are all big advancements. But really the question is this improving the accuracy of the outputs that we're getting, right? So it depends on the task. Let's break it down. So simple tasks like grammar, editing, you're not going to see a remarkable improvement with the model increase, right? The accuracy and the quality of the outputs is very much driven by what you write in your prompt. So if you say, make me a professional email, it's a very, very narrow prompt. If you say, make me a professional email in the tone of Forbes and make sure that it has a proper ending, proper intro, and addresses the proper concerns with this form of style, then you're going to get a much better response out of it. So a big part of getting the accuracy out of the system is your prompting. And the second, obviously, is your model.
Love it, love it. The prompting improvements that you're talking about there, Brian, what's been your personal journey on discovering how to improve your prompting techniques?
So it's really fascinating because I've been there since the early versions of ChatGPT, the early versions before that of BART, which was a pre-ChatGPT model. And you saw the quality improvement of the responses. So for example, if I give it a 20-page document and I say, summarize this document, the earlier models may pull out 4 or 5 points where the later models pull out 10 or 12 and give you a much more well-rounded summary, right? So that's the first part, is the model. The second part is the prompt, right? Go through each page, pull out the outline of each page, pull out the points from each page, list the points from each page. So there is this technique, it's called tree of thought, where you break down the prompt and you ask it to show steps, right? So it's a 20-page document, break down each page, give me each page, and then combine the results after you summarize each page into a final summary, and it's going to come up with a better response. Think of it as yourself. If you were asked to do a big math problem in your head, what's the chances that you're going to get it right, Jay?
For me, not very good at math. So
if you had to write it down and then show the steps, the chances you would get the answer right is much higher, right?
100%, definitely. Sticking with the accuracy outputs here, Brian. One of the things that often goes through my head when I'm looking at the outputs, particularly if I've given a lot of inputs and I've asked it to spend some time thinking about something that's quite complex, is the outputs are often plausible, but it's hard to sometimes work out whether they're more than plausible. And so when it comes to trusting the outputs, what are the personal steps you're taking before you share those outputs with the world or put them in a PowerPoint or send them on an email? What steps do you take to go through some sort of refinement with regards to what it's generating?
Perfect. let's take an example here. So say you wanted to come up with 5 strategic options for your product line in terms of expanding into a new market, right? So you could say to the software, give me 5 strategic options, and I want to pick one, right? And it's going to come with off the top of his head the 5. You can expand its creativity by saying, give me 20, right, across these areas. And now you got the option to pick 5. You pick the top 5 that you like, and then you can narrow down on that. Now, there is a thing that occurs in AI, which is called hallucination. And you really trust the output is giving you the true answer. For example, in New York City, I don't know if you can see the background there. Yeah. So we have a lot of tall buildings here. And so you ask the AI, how many buildings are over 50 stories? It'll say 200. And you ask it again, it'll say 70. It changes its answer every time because it really doesn't know. It's trying to satisfy you, make you happy by giving you an answer. This is not the way it should work. Now, when it comes to product management, you got to give a right answer, right? So some of the newer AIs out there can verify a lot of their core assumptions by searching the web. So you have this ability. You could say any key assumptions, please highlight them, and then verify that with a source from the web that I can click on, right? So if you want to say, I want to expand into this key market and the market is 200 million in terms of value, give me a citation showing me that it's really 200 million and not a number you made up.
Nice. You referenced at the start there different models from different providers. Is there key themes that or go-to models that you use for specific tasks? Sticking with that particular theme, you've got a market and customer research activity that you're going through. Would you go to Claude or ChatGPT or a particular model number for that particular type of job? And if so, why would you choose one over the other?
Jay, thank you for that. That's a good point. Now, it's a very emerging market. We're way in the beginning of generative AI in terms of all of what's going on. And you're starting to see some of these model providers niche off. For example, Anthropic, which is run out of San Francisco, they have a premium model called Claude, and they're starting to narrow down on the coding side and the finance. So those are two model, the Claude 3.5 or 3.7 Sonnet, is a really good model for finance and coding. So many of you have to create business cases. That might be a place where you use that model. When it comes to, say, conducting deep customer research by reviewing web links, you might want to use a ChatGPT with the deep research function. They have the 3.0 mini, and that's currently today. Maybe they release something new tomorrow. Can't say, right? It's moving so quick. But that's one of the other models. And then you have your smaller models. So if you're interacting with customers on a regular basis and they're interacting over chat, you may want a lighter weight model that's really trained on your product. That means when I say trained on your product, it means your product documentation is loaded into the system that it can read that and refer back to that. So these are all some of the things that are very rapidly shifting. Thank you again.
Brian, what limitations have you found here when integrating generative AI into your processes? When do you feel that you've hit the limit on where we're at today with generative AI, and what do you do next when you're finding you're hitting a limit?
Sure. For example, let's talk about mathematics. Asking a generative AI to do mathematics without it writing code in Python or in whatever language it is kind of a bad idea, right? So maybe 6 times 6, it knows it's 36. It knows it because it's seen it 100,000 times in the literature, right? But when you ask it to do a big multiplication number in its head, it doesn't know. It might know the first couple numbers and the last couple numbers because that's how math works, but everything in the middle it's making up. So always, any type of financial, any calculations and spreadsheets, always ask it to write out the code for that. The second thing you'll learn is AIs can get lazy. They can, you can give them a 100-page document, you say summarize it. It'll look at the first 20 pages and then skip the last 80 and just kind of push you off to the side. It wants to make you happy. It wants to give you the answer quick as possible, but it's not going to go through the thorough research of reading everything. So you have to break it down into steps. You have to say, read the first 20, give me a summary. Read the next 20, give me a summary. And now put it all together and it'll go through. And you'll start to notice this when you start paying attention to the finer details. It gets lazy. The other thing, again, hallucination, as we spoke about. And then finally, there's this interesting phenomena where certain of the premier systems will, the quality of the responses will diminish as the user load on the server increases. So you'll start to notice during the peak times of the day, the ChatGPT may give you a really sloppy answer with some very poor English, and you're like, why did you do that? It's just because it's load balancing internally and it's trying to serve as many people as possible.
Right. Yeah, I think the analogy I've heard before is treat it like an assistant, and as your product assistant, it's going to have bad days, and sometimes it's going to your point, get lazy. And I think the other piece, in addition to the hallucination that I've experienced, is that recency bias. The more recent the prompt, the more relevant it thinks it is, although that's not necessarily the case, particularly
Yeah.
when you're asking a lot of questions from a research perspective. Have you come across that yourself?
So let me go back to the limitations part. If you view a person, and think of an AI as almost a person with abilities and skills, right? If you give them an article and you say, "Hey, can you summarize this article?" They'll be able to do it fairly well. They'll read it and they'll, come up with a summary. If you tell them to apply an analysis technique to that article, they got to read the article, they got to extract the information, and then they got to apply that summary or that analysis technique. Say maybe they're looking at, voice of the customer, trying to pull that out and apply it into a persona. That type of analysis is the next level. So you got summary, analysis, and then the third level down is now read this analysis and make a decision based on these factors. And now you're asking it to go 3 levels deep, and you're going to start to see it fail there at the decision level, right? The analysis level will be weak. The summary level will be very strong. So the more you ask it to do in one prompt and not break it up, the worse it's going to be.
Brian, let's bring some of this to real world case studies. What are some examples, success stories of companies, of teams that you've come across or worked with that have applied and utilized generative AI in their product management practice?
Yes. Okay, excellent. So if you look at the product management process, obviously you have conducting the customer market research, getting the insights, then translating that into the planning side where you are going to create the product plans, the product requirement documents, the product roadmaps, any associated, quality documents associated with that, and then the execution part. So you get those 3 parts, right? So let's start out with the product research, right? So there is some ChatGPT, the colleagues that use ChatGPT deep research to get a quick understanding of a new market that they're considering. And they'll put it on a task and they'll outline, say, go look at the SaaS market for, receipt scanning receipts. Give me an idea of all the softwares out there and how well they fare in the marketplace. And it'll set it to that task, and they'll come back in 20 minutes and it'll write them a really detailed, good overview to give them an understanding, where in the past they used to have to do, 4 or 5 hours of work. So that's that's a really good example. Another is companies that use like Databricks and Snowflake. They'll have a lot of internal customer data, especially usage data, and they're starting to use those, AI models associated with Databricks and Snowflake to pull out insights into their system and generate reports. So that's a really good example. Do you got any questions about that?
I think the question that's coming to mind, Brian, is what you're talking about there is knowledge generation at rapid speeds, with quite strong integrity around what's being generated. My question is, if you was to go back to your 20-year-old self and you were in this world with all of this AI capability around you, what do you think your product management journey would look like? How would it be different for someone who's 20 years old right now and have all of these tools and technologies available that we didn't have at the start of our careers?
Oh, that would be a dream for me. I would say from a mentor's perspective, I would be telling those junior product managers, let's go out there, let's apply some of the things that you're doing on a daily basis in generative AI as a test, right? So let's take in that customer information, process it, see if we can't refine those prompts and get out what we need, because maybe this version of AI won't do such a great job, but maybe in 6 months, that next version will be right on par where you want it. So keep attuned to the tools that are coming out, try out your different skills as you learn them, and practice with AI, because maybe today it's not going to work, but tomorrow it will.
Do you think that generative AI is leveling the playing field in the sense that more junior product managers can create knowledge and insights using these tools in a way that senior product managers used to have to do manually and spend the days investing? Do you think that there's now a more level playing field, or you still think the fundamentals around getting out and talking to customers and putting the time in and understanding the engineering side of the product are still fundamental, that progressing through your product management career is still going to take time?
Interestingly, I view a successful product manager as one who is creative, can organize thoughts in their mind and form a vision of how the product should be, and then help everyone get it done, right? So everything else in there, writing the product requirement documents and all that, that's busy work. You want to get those features, the ideas for those features done, and get them into writing and spread the knowledge out to the developers or the engineers and get that done. So really, for me, it is about improving the opportunity and the time that you put into creativity, into your decision making. The more time you have to come up with a better version of your SaaS product or your new camera, the more time you spend on the creative process, the more options you can explore, and the better you can come to a solution that will really delight the customer, in my opinion.
Brian, can I ask how you or how would you recommend product managers at different levels do and don't use generative AI? And so an example of my question would be, at an executive level, if you're presenting to the board, what should you be mindful when using generative AI to build you a presentation or build you some messaging? And similarly, when you're down at the junior level and you're putting together a product requirements document for taking to an engineering team, what should you be mindful there of?
Yeah, absolutely. So as we spoke about earlier, you have that summarization, analysis, and decision making. I would avoid using the generative AI in any way to make decisions. You're a product manager. You have a deep knowledge of the company, of their culture, of the customers. You don't want to throw that at the AI and let that make a decision on how your product should look or how it should function. You want to take that decision upon yourself. But if you're talking about a presentation, maybe you could PDF it and put it through there and make sure you don't have any silly grammar mistakes, any weird punctuation errors. Definitely use it there. Creating images, creating illustrations from illustrations of your product sketches, right? And fleshing that out. These are all great ways to expand the amount of creativity that you have going into it. It's like a funnel. You want to have creativity coming in and expanding that until a narrow point where you make that decision, and then create the vision of how that product looks going out.
Nice. Let's keep going with that then. Where is the future taking us, do you think, Brian? You spoke about the velocity of change here for models and how quick that's working through. What do you think are the constants? If I think about successful products, there's the constants, regardless of the macro and micro factors that are going on around them that ensure those products are successful. For product managers, what do you think are their constants going forward in terms of skill development in order to stay relevant in this landscape that's changing so fast?
Yeah, excellent. So I'm addressing a lot of these questions in the book that I'm writing, which is the application of generative AI in product management. One of the things that you as a product manager should definitely be attuned to is, some of the advancements in these leadership models in AI, right? If they say that it's really good at generating images, give it a test. Go on there, spend 5 minutes, see, plug in a couple of your product images, see if it will make it a little better. Put in some of your summaries, see if it comes out with a better idea. Expand its see how creative it is. Play with these things on a regular basis. The other thing you want to do is systematically identify in your product management workflows what tasks can be, safely used for generative AI. Maybe it's like taking a small summary of a product feature and then expanding that into a clear written description. Maybe generative AI is perfect for that, and then you just have to go in and do some edits and identify those items early on so that you can, as the generative AI gets better, you can tap into more and more of those throughout your process. One of the things I like to do is I like to keep a cheat sheet of my favorite prompts in a Word document on my desktop so I can refer to them. And then as the AI gets better, I notice that the quality of the outputs get better, and I'm not having to retype the prompt each time. The input's the same, the output is measurably different.
Brian, let's put ourselves 2 years ahead from now. What do you think a day in the life of Brian's going to look like in a world of AI 2 years from now? What would be different?
Let me put myself in the shoes of your product managers, right? 2 years from now, there's going to be, in my opinion, an integrated suite of research tools that integrate generative AI into them. You're just going to put all the data and all the knowledge that you can accumulate into this customer research suite. All the reports that you think are relative are going to go in there. And then you're going to ask it to search the web. So any email support tickets, any links to, Facebook posts talking about the product, any reviews from Amazon, all this is going to go in there, and out it's going to come a really clear report of all the opportunities and weaknesses of your product. And your competitors are going to be doing the same thing to you. So be ready for quick responses on weaknesses. So the speed and pace at which the products are going to be evolving and innovating is going to increase. That's one thing, Jay.
Nice. I think you touch on a really important point there that everyone has access to the same tool sets here, and the importance both in terms of your professional development and your product development, staying at the forefront and keeping up to date and up to speed with this change is critical. How excited are you for that day 2 years from now, Brian?
I worry about the adoption rate of these advanced tools in product management. You'll have some firms, that are more antiquated in their use, maybe due to budget, maybe due to the dispersed nature of their workforce, not interacting with each other on a daily basis. So I worry about some of these firms falling behind. Would you say the same?
I think so. I think there's similarities here in the technological shift, like what we saw in the 90s, where some just simply didn't believe in the adoption of the internet or the capability of rolling out infrastructure like that was possible at a national and international level. And so some people sat back, waited to the mid-2000s and got left behind.
Very good.
Brian, this has been so interesting. My last question for you is I suppose a little bit more theological. You've got this passion for creating content. You're writing your book on AI and product management. I've got a passion for podcasting, creating this content here. Both of us are creating knowledge. My question is, do you think there's still going to be value in the knowledge we're creating through podcasts and books 2 to 5 years from now when generative AI is going to have so much knowledge within it?
So translating the information that is on your desktop into your mind is always going to be there. There's engaging ways that media can touch you. I believe in the future, you're going to have your own personal AI assistant that is going to be looking in your interest for the best knowledge on product management, for your hobbies, for your interests, and routing that information to you, maybe outside of the email, maybe through push notifications on your app, and so that you can go through and get a customized, deep dive into whatever topic you want, and you're up to date with the information. So it's going to be more a driven model where the information is being driven to you through some type of AI agent.
With what you're talking about there of having this AI assistant, it reminds me of, if I think back to, let's say, probably 15 to 20 years ago, when the mobile phones in the workforce became more common. And around that 2005 to 2010 era, as we switched out of Blackberries, the idea of bring your own device to work became more common, and enterprises had to adopt to allow people to bring their own phones as opposed to locking you into the phone for the company.
Yeah.
Do you see something similar happening with regards to AI assistance, in the sense that you won't have to use the company AI, that you'll be able to bring your own AI? Or do you think governance will remain so strict and IP protection will remain so strict that companies won't want that? They'll want you within the safety net of their garden.
That's an interesting question. I really view it as in two camps. I think the first camp is companies that are willing to explore the frontiers of new technologies and let their employees freely go about bringing new technologies to work, with the understanding that please don't use this if you don't trust it, right? Don't let important stuff leak. Give it a try. Make sure we go through the steps for before you start putting your company strategy in it, right? But marketing, literature, all that stuff that's going to be released to the the public anyways, yeah, go for it, right? And then you have a second camp: banks, healthcare, insurance of companies that are highly regulated, that data breaches and anything that gets out could really cost them. I see that branch of companies really sticking to the guns and staying in a very strong governance framework.
Okay. Brian, I want to bring it back to your mechanical engineering background. A lot when we're talking about generative AI, we think of SaaS, we think of software. I'm keen to know, are you still active in that mechanical engineering world? And what use do you see for generative AI in the world of mechanical engineering?
So that's an interesting question, because early on, one of the applications that we look at is, integrating through like structures. So imagine a table, something as simple as a table. How thick should the legs be? Well, we could use an AI-based algorithm to determine the optimum thickness based on the loading. And so it runs through a bunch of calculations and eventually collapses on the answer. So they've been using this in engineering, mechanical, fluid dynamics, thermodynamics for quite a while. And you're going to start to see these applications become smarter and smarter, where you can chat with the applications. And you're going to see this across both SaaS. You're going to see this in enterprise softwares, where you're going to say, I don't know how to change the font size on this document and then distribute it towards all these people. Can you tell me how to do it? And you chat with the application and it's going to do it for you. Same for mechanical software, same for utility softwares. It's going to be very fascinating.
Brian, if you was to be stepping out of high school right now, and you wanted to get into computer science, engineering, product management, how would you be using, what would your advice be for those people in terms of wanting to leverage all of this world of opportunity around generative AI to find that entry path and open that first door for you?
Yes. Definitely reach out to people on LinkedIn. If you're new to the field, you can shadow people. And people are always looking to mentor proteges. That's a very interesting way of going about, expanding your career knowledge. The other thing is, do a lot of small projects. Give something a try. For example, you might have had a project in the last year of your senior college classes. Give it a try in AI. Give it a try in 2 or 3 of them and see how it comes out. Maybe the project is to, create a new SaaS software and an app. Give it a try online. Dedicate a half a day to it. See how you can get it done through the AI softwares, and if it even can do it, because you might be surprised. There's a lot of little caveats to these softwares. Anything from asking it, help me plan how to do this, to what are your capabilities? These are all things it can answer. It can even collaborate. Now, that's one of the major things I didn't mention, if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, let's go into it. Let's go into that collaboration piece.
So a lot of these foundational AI models have the ability to share the chat, right? So you could say, hey, I want to share this chat out. It's a strategy analysis I've been performing, and you can send an email. But one of the interesting things that people aren't aware of is that you can actually ask the AI, help me in the collaboration process. So when I share this link, it brings the person up to speed and tells them what they need to do. It can structure the conversation and the tasks and what needs to be looked at in a way that the other person can onboard into the chat really quickly.
Nice. That's a really good point to finish on, and actually really appreciate that mentorship advice you've shared there, Brian. Brian, you've brought so many insights and such a unique perspective to the conversation today. I really appreciate your thought leadership and your experience that you've shared with the audience. So thank you so much.
Thank you again.
Absolute pleasure. Brian, thank you. For the audience listening, thank you for listening to Product Coalition podcast. If you'd like to learn more about Product Coalition, please head over to productcoalition.com. Thanks again.
For today's episode of the Product Coalition podcast, hosted by Jay Stansell, got questions or want to explore more topics? Connect with Jay on LinkedIn or join the ever-growing Product Coalition community on Substack. Thanks for listening.